Hello everyone, I'm Cassie. Welcome back to my channel and my kitchen. I have a huge bay of windows right here, so it gives me really good light. So today I really wanted to do a sit down video, and it might be a little bit longer than some of the other videos I want to make, but I wanted to talk to you about my birth story. It was just a little over a year ago that I had Charlie, and I haven't really written down or recorded my birth story, and so I think this will be a great way for him to look back and understand, what the day was like. I really just want to let other women and soon-to-be moms know that you can have a really great birth experience. Honestly, when I was pregnant, I was terrified of giving birth. I just heard so many horror stories. One of my sisters had a really traumatic birth, and so I was scared. And one of the things that was important to me was trying to have a natural birth, because I was a first-time mom. I really didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know if I would be able to do it naturally, but that was my goal. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about in this video is nitrous oxide and how I use that during my birth. So I'll get a little bit more into what nitrous oxide is and how it feels, and some side effects and things like that. So if you want to know more about that, stay tuned. So it was a Friday, and it was supposed to be my last day of work. I was 8 days out from my due date, and my boss had graciously given me the ability to work from home my very last week so that I didn't go into labor at work. Well, that didn't really work out that way. So that morning I woke up and taken a shower, and Ted was still sleeping, and I felt a little bit different in the shower, and I was like, it feels like I'm having cramps, but a little stronger. And so I'm like, this is probably the very beginning of labor, but I just heard about people being in labor for days, and so I'm thinking, it's really not a big deal. And I talked to Ted about it, and he was like, well, let's not tell anybody. I don't want to get people's hopes up, because you're probably not really in labor. So I was like, yeah, I agree. So he was working from home that day, and I left for work, and I started tracking my contractions probably around right when I left, about 7:15. And I think they were about 20 minutes apart at that point. And they were really but they were irregular. And so I got to work, and I told a couple of my coworkers that hey, I might be in labor, but I really don't know. And so I worked that morning, and I think around 9:30, I thought I was in labor, but I wasn't sure. And so I called the OB and talked to them, and they asked me some questions, and they were like, it does sound like you're in the early stages of labor. This could go on for a couple of days. If your water hasn't broken, just, go about your day and you'll be fine. So I'm thinking, okay, so I am in labor, but it could be a while. And so I just kept thinking, the contractions are going to get worse. And I was trying not to dwell on it. And I wanted to finish up things at work and hand things over and just feel ready to leave. And so by about 11, I think my contractions were 10 minutes apart, and one of my best friends worked with me, and so I told her, I was like, I'm in labor, I need to go home. I'm afraid if I don't leave now, I'm not gonna make it home, and I'm gonna have this baby here. And she was like, well, let me drive you. And I'm like, no, they're only 10 minutes apart. I live 15 minutes away. If I have one contraction, it's not intense enough that I, won't be able to pull over and handle it. So I leave, and everyone's like, let me know when you get home. We want to make sure you're safe. And so I decided to stop at Walmart on the way home, because I had ordered some nursing pajamas, and the way it works at Walmart, when you order something online to be picked up in the store, you have to give your name. And if somebody else is going to pick it up, you have to say it then when you order it. And I didn't think that was going to be an issue, and so the only person who could pick it up was me. So my rational pregnancy brain was like, I have to get these pajamas right now on my way home, or I'm not going to have them to go to the hospital. So I stopped at Walmart, was having contractions, got my pajamas, and headed home. And it's really not that far from my house to Walmart. And so I called my mom after I left Walmart and told her what was going on. And I was like, I'm in labor. I just wanted you to know, like, be aware, be ready to go to the hospital. And as I'm pulling into the driveway, I literally had to, like, put the phone aside and just, like, breathe through this contraction. And so I get back on the phone with my mom, and she was like, I think you're, like, that just sounded a little more intense than you're letting on. And I'm like, no, it's fine, it's fine. So I get into the house, and Ted's dad was over and a couple other people, and they were going to go to lunch. And I think I had, like, texted Ted, like, I'm heading home, like, I think I'm in labor, but still, like, really none of us thought it was that big of a deal. But I told Ted, I'm like, please don't leave me here alone, like, you can't go to lunch. And so he didn't. He stayed with me. And I don't know, a couple hours later, probably about 2:30, my contractions were the 5-1-1 that they tell you about. So 5 minutes apart, lasting a minute, and going on for an hour. And so at that point, we were told, that's when we call our doctor's office. So I called the doctor's office, and since it was after 12 on a Friday, they were closed, so it was after hours. So I had to call the on-call, line. And so they tell you, like, okay, they get your information and somebody will call you back within 30 minutes. Well, 30 minutes goes by and no one called us back, and we didn't really feel like we could leave to go to the hospital until they said we could, which was really naive. But so we waited, and it had been a half an hour, no one called us. So I was like, Ted, you have to call them back. And I said, if no one answers and they don't call us back within like 5 minutes, we're going to the hospital. Like, I can't do this anymore. So luckily, the midwife that was on call called us back. It was like, yeah, definitely come into the hospital. So we jump in the car, and it's like a 15-minute drive to the hospital. And I love this part of the story because this is Ted's favorite part, but he was so looking forward to being able to run a red light for like a really good reason, which is really silly, but you see that stuff in the movies, and he felt like this was his one opportunity. So we got to a red light, and I was in between contractions, and he was like, can I run it? And I was like, no, it's fine. Like, let's not be unsafe. But my contractions were like really intense at this point, and I think they were probably like, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 minutes apart. So they were coming really quickly. And so we didn't run that light, but we got to like the next red light, and I was like, run the light, like get me to the hospital. So he got to run his red light. But there was no one around, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. And so we get to the hospital, and they had us like fill out paperwork, and I'm sitting here like, I'm in labor. So if your hospital lets you pre-register before going, definitely do that. Like, rookie mistake right here. So yeah, it felt like an eternity, and Ted was filling out the paperwork and all this stuff. And then later they were like, oh yeah, you could have filled out some of this, after. And we're like, thanks for letting us know. So I get back to a room, and the nurse is asking me all these questions, like health history and stuff, but like about my grandparents. And I'm like, why is this relevant? I am in like full labor right now. What is happening? And so I was really frustrated. And I had told them as soon as I got there that I wanted the nitrous. And they were like, okay, yeah, okay. And they had just started offering it at the hospital like a couple weeks before. And so I just kept pushing, to get the nitrous. But the interesting thing is, I honestly feel like I really didn't have any signs that I was going into labor. And if I did, I just completely missed them. And I hadn't been checked at the OB, and I had an appointment the Wednesday before all this was happening. And they had to check me because they were like, well, if you're not really having any signs, like most first-time moms go into labor after their due date, so we'll check you next week. And I was like, okay, that was fine by me. I didn't want to get all undressed and be uncomfortable and all that. But I think if they would have checked me, that I would have been dilated, and I think that would have given me anxiety, like knowing that it was coming. So I think it was kind of a good thing I didn't have them check. So we're we're in the birthing room, and the nurse is, I can't remember if she had like the monitor on me at that point or what, but I just remember her saying like, it doesn't seem like your contractions are very strong. And so Ted and I both looked at each other, and afterwards we talked, and we both thought that she was going to send us home. Like, we thought this was false labor. And when she said that, in my mind, I'm thinking, if this isn't real labor, like, I can't do this. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to need an epidural. And I think in my head, I just kept thinking it's going to get worse. The contractions are going to get worse. So finally, she checks to see how dilated I am, and she doesn't say anything, and then she's like, I'm not really sure why, I guess to get a better angle, but she was like, put your hands in a fist and sit, put them under your butt, and I think it was to help her be able to see better. And I think she was also shocked because I was 10 centimeters dilated and ready to go like into pushing. So that was a surprise, because we went from thinking, they're gonna send me home to, you're gonna have this baby like ASAP. So she checked me, and I realized like I'm gonna have Charlie really soon. And then all I could think about was the nitrous, and I still didn't have the nitrous. And I'm like, please, like, I really need this nitrous. Like, I really, really want it. And I knew even if I wanted an epidural at that point, I wasn't gonna get one. So this was like my one hope. And since it was new, like, they were kind of hesitant to like give it to people, I think, and they didn't really know the full protocol, and they kept saying like they needed to give me an IV in case I needed it, and that was part of the protocol for having the nitrous. Well, my midwife was saying, no, it's not part of the protocol. I've given it, we've given it to other women here at the hospital, and they haven't needed an IV. So they were like arguing back and forth about it. And at one point I just remember saying like, give me the GD nitrous because I can't take it. And so finally my midwife was like, well, if you guys can't get a vein, because I was dehydrated and in labor, and like my hands were tingling, and they just could not get a vein in my hands, which is unusual for me because usually it's really easy for me to, for them to get blood from me. So they finally gave me an IV in my arm, which they ended up never using. And it was such a pain because they left it in for like over a day. And so while you're trying to breastfeed with an IV in your arm and you can't bend it and it's really uncomfortable, it was really hard trying to start breastfeeding. So that was not a good situation. But so they got that in, and they brought me the nitrous, and I literally like snatched that mask from the lady's hand. Like, she was trying to tell me all this stuff, and I'm just like, give me the nitrous. And it was amazing. Like, the way I like to describe nitrous to people, because I've had it for dental procedures, like I have really bad TMJ, and so I've had it at the dentist a lot. And the way I like to describe it to people is if you're taking nitrous, somebody could punch you in the face, and you would know they punched you, but you wouldn't care. And so it like really takes the edge off, but you're still fully aware of what's going on. Like, if somebody asked you a question, you could answer them, or you could, respond to what they're saying or whatever. So I finally got the nitrous, and I had a death grip on that thing. And so they had me, I was in the pushing stage, and I think like it had relaxed me so much that I wasn't pushing hard enough because I didn't realize I needed to push harder. And so at one point they threatened to like take it away from me, and I was like, oh heck no, you're not taking this away from me. And so I took it off for a minute because it doesn't last very long. And as soon as you take the mask off, the effects wear off really quickly within a matter of seconds, which is a really nice advantage to the nitrous. It's not long lasting. And so I finally, I was pushing, and I got to the point where I was pushing to the point that they needed me to. And so they let me keep the nitrous. But it was awesome because I remember everything that went on, but I don't remember in a negative way, or like I don't really remember the pain portion of it. One side effect that I think people should be aware of is it does take your memory away a little bit. And I don't know how much of that is just like you know, the memory loss of pregnancy in general, because it's so intense that your body just wants to forget it. But I don't like vividly remember every part of the birth, but I do remember the birth, if that makes sense. So one thing is, like, I don't remember him crying for the first time, but I remember him being like put on my chest almost immediately. So that's one thing to consider if you're thinking about the nitrous oxide for your birth. But the other thing, one of the big advantages that I think it gave me was, like I said, it relaxed me, and so I wasn't fighting my contractions, and I think that allowed me to not tear. I had like very, very minimal tearing. I think I needed like 2 stitches in total, and they were like really impressed by that. They were really impressed that like my labor had gone so quickly, and they told me, because I had Charlie at 4:59, so if I had stayed at work, I would have had him at work. Oh gosh, that would have been terrible. And they told me next time I have a baby, I need to come in like sooner, because my labor is going to progress even faster, most likely. So that should be interesting. If I do plan to have another baby, I don't know when, but I will definitely use the nitrous again. I think one tip I would give is, when you're at that like final push and you're trying to get the head out, like maybe take the mask off so that you are more conscious and more aware of what's going on, if that's important to you. And one of the other things I regret not doing is not having somebody take video, because my memory isn't so sharp. It would be really nice to like see it from a different perspective. So tip out there for anyone who wants to take it. And that's my birth story. Like, it went really well, and I have fond memories of it, which you don't hear typically about birth stories. And I really just would recommend the nitrous oxide. It is something that's really popular in Europe and Canada, I think, and it's becoming more popular here, and I know, at least I live in North Carolina, and a lot of the local hospitals here are starting to offer it. And so I think it's a really great thing, and I really try to tell anybody who I see that's pregnant, like, look into the nitrous oxide option. Like, it's really great. And I've talked to a couple other moms who have used it, and like, they have rave reviews. Like, I honestly haven't really heard any negative things about it. And my one negative is just that I don't have such a clear memory of the birth, but I don't know if that's a bad thing. So that's my story. If you have used nitrous and you loved it, let me know in the comments. If you have questions about nitrous oxide or anything else that I didn't answer, let me know in the comments. I would be happy to answer your questions. Let me know if you have any video requests, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.